Hi everyone, how's it going? My name is Jessie Medina, and I seriously want to show up more here. I always feel compelled to one talk. I love to talk. I'm Latina, and also I love to share knowledge. I absolutely love teaching or just sharing stories. I think there's so much power in that, and this kind of ties in with what I want to share today, which is the truth about starting a business, and more specifically starting a business as a Latina, a millennial, a woman, because it's just not the same. And I think, this is not something to play a victim card or anything like that. It's just statistically we don't have as many role models, and even when we do, they are women that are so far ahead of us, like celebrities, huge speakers, the kind of people that even though they are amazing and they might be doing something similar to what you aspire to do, it's still not someone that you can call. It's not someone that you can talk to. So it's really hard to find people that you can ask questions to and that can relate to the challenges that you face, whether you're a woman of color, Latina. For me, being a Latina, I'm an immigrant. I came to the U.S. as a teenager for school. And, I had to learn everything on my own, from how to apply to college to, fast forward growing in the corporate world, and then fast forward starting my own business. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the truth about starting a business, because I think there are so many gurus out there that, one, they feel out of reach. Two, even when they speak to us, there's a lot of things that can resonate with us. There's a lot of things that we can learn from. However, they might still not completely apply to us. When I was starting out, I would hear things like, when it came to funding, for example, you can just ask anyone around you and raise funds. If you can raise funds from big investors, ask. There's no reason why you can't ask your peers for $500 investment or gift or whatever it may be. And for me, it was like, no, I cannot think of one person around me at that time that I could go to for money for $500. That was a lot of money. And again, yes, I was in a corporate world, or I knew people that had money, but it wasn't people close to me. It wasn't like my mom, my brother, my cousin. And so again, this is just one small example of how these gurus are so disconnected, and it's not their fault. It's just what it is, right? They just grew up in a different circle, with different opportunities, privilege, whatnot. And so being an immigrant, when I talk to fellow immigrants, it's okay, that's kind of rare. You don't find, and there are exceptions, but it's not common to say, yeah, I can ask my friends and family for these big loans or $500. So that was the second thing. The second issue is that as a minority, a person of color, or just even if you're not a person of color, but maybe you are, more lower middle class or whatever it may be, that you may have a disadvantage where you don't feel like the mainstream gurus actually can really, really speak to you. Now, even when you do, right? Even when we do have role models, I love Oprah, I love all these women, Brene Brown, even when I do have a role model, a third challenge is that you can't call them. You're not friends with them. You can't ask specific questions, right? So that's another challenge, because when I was starting, I started the first Latina co-working space, and I, first of all, not even familiar with the co-working space in itself, right? It's not a business model that has been around for 10, 50, 100 years. It's a newer business model. And even the ones that did start, back in the day, they're so big now that, again, I don't know their founder. I don't have any connections like that. And so I have to get creative and find out ways to do research and to learn more and to see how I could fill in this space. So here are some of the tips when you're starting out. One of the really important things that I share with people when people come to me all the time now I am the connection. Now I am the person that other women come to And I think since I started this co-working space, I've had at least 6 women reach out to me, Latina women that are like, hey, you showed me it can be done. I want to start a co-working space. How do I start? I have women in like Spain and India and like here, different states. And they're asking me these questions. And I'm happy to share with them because I get it. I was there. I didn't know who to call. And now they were able to see that it's doable. It's possible, right? Because another Latina did it. So this is why it's so important to create that representation. If you don't find it, create it. And this is one of the ways that you can make sure that you start a business that's viable and that's going to have a demand. So if you ever find yourself saying to yourself, I wish we had XYZ, whatever it may be, and it's not out there, and then you look it up and it's still not out there, and then you're like, I wish there was someone that was doing this so I could ask them these questions, and no one's doing it. That's one of the signs, if you're passionate about it, if it's something you really want, if it's something that there's a demand for it, this is one of the times where you can have, I guess, the first confirmation that this is a good, viable business idea. This is the first one, right? This is what's going to allow you to feel like, okay, I can spend time doing the research for this, and I can spend the next steps for this because I have a demand for it. There's a need for this. And for me, it was the need for the type of space that I have. So when I first was starting out, the only one that I knew of, the Wing, it's female founded, but it's, this 2 white women from New York, I believe. And, I'm sure they had great intentions. I don't know them personally. I just don't blame them for not creating a space that's diverse. And I don't blame them because who cared? Like, now we're having these conversations, but who cared? Like 10 years ago or 7 years ago or whatever. I don't know when they started. I think they started like 5 years ago or something. People weren't having these conversations about diversity, about community. I was, because it was relevant to me. A lot of people of color had been having this conversation for a long time. But in those circles, these conversations weren't happening. In Silicon Valley, in the corporate world, executives, like no one really cared. And I think the reason why people don't care is not because they're careless. I believe that most people mean well and most people have good intentions. So I think that because it doesn't affect them, they're just unaware of it, right? Like if there's an issue that you've never had to face, like say, I've never been a refugee, so I don't know much about refugees. I know more than maybe the average American, but I don't know a lot because I wasn't in that spot. So again, I'm not blaming anyone or throwing shade on anyone. It's just, I noticed that first of all, that space wasn't here where I live. Second of all, it wasn't very diverse. And third of all, again, the price point and everything else was just so out of touch. It was so tone deaf that I felt like there was a space for women of color, especially Latinas, to create this space. I believe when I started doing the research, I found like 2 co-working spaces in the US, in other states, not where I live in California, and I found like 2 other ones by Black women, and I was really excited about that. I was like, yes, like so exciting. I didn't really find any Latina founded spaces, and I wanted a space like that because I had already started my creative agency. And here in San Diego, I was going to a co-working space, a local co-working space, but I was new to San Diego. I had just quit my corporate job. I moved to San Diego. I started my agency. I was trying to make friends. And so I started doing like women events. I started throwing the events, creating a community. We had such an amazing community. And I would throw these events and women loved it. And I would make friends there. But then I would go to work in the office at the co-working space. And I wasn't making connections there. Nobody was like me. Nobody cared about the things I cared about. People were kind and polite, but they just weren't my people. I just didn't make friends with them, and I would try, like, sometimes, like, it just felt forced. Like, sometimes I'd be like, yeah, we need to grab a beer sometime, and, like, then it wouldn't happen, or it's just awkward. And so, anyway, so again, I started feeling that need for that. And I found myself, before it even clicked, I found myself saying that a lot. Like, I wish there was a space like this. I wish there was a space like that. I wish there was a space for women, diverse, blah, 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 feminine, a safe space. And one day it just clicked. I was just like, why don't I create this space? Like, if it's not there, I want to do it. And I had really lofty goals when I started. I wanted this fancy, I envisioned like this 3-level, super fancy place where women could not just work, but, you know, there would be like a dance studio where like a dance teacher could teach there and like rent the space, but also teach there. And so our women could go there and have a beauty spa and like have all these things, which I haven't seen my vision to full fruition, but that's okay, right? Because this is the second point. The second point is you have to take action. Again, going back to whatever challenge you may have, being Latina, being a woman, not having the funds, not having the connections, not having the resources, not having the mentors, whatever it may be, or all of the above, you have to get started. Because, sister, if you wait until everything is perfect or you wait to get these things, you're most likely not going to be able to do it. This is just the truth. And why? Because, I mean, how are people even going to know that you have a great idea if you never just put it out there, right? You almost have to prove yourself. This is another thing that I noticed being a Latina, is you have to prove yourself. Like, somebody else, like, I've heard all the stories when a guy comes into like a bunch of investors in Silicon Valley and he pitches a good idea, but I've heard this from investors, okay? I'm not making this up because I've made a lot of connections now. And they tell me, if a white male comes and gives me this idea, and obviously it has to be a good idea, I'll trust. Like, I'll never question his ability to do it. I care about the idea. I care that it makes money. But there's no questioning the ability to do it usually. Now, when it comes to women, and this has been told to me even by female investors, not just males, but even female investors. I remember there was one female investor that even said that she was for funding women. She was all about female empowerment. She was all about supporting women. But one day it clicked in her head that she looked at her portfolio, at all the companies she had invested in, and she didn't have even one female founded company. And she looked back and she thought to herself, and she was like, I've had many women pitch to me. And I highly doubt that out of like the 50 investments that she had, not even one of those women had a viable idea. So she realized that there was this bias that she wasn't even aware of, where she, there's always that question because it's not as common. It's not as common for women or women of color to get funded. And so we have this bias that it's like an unconscious bias that, this person might not be able to do it. And again, it's unconscious. You don't notice it. It's just, so again, going back to that, right? Like, if you wait no one's going to come and hand you anything. No one is going to come and just say, look, here's this money, you just from an idea. So this is what I decided to do. I decided I'm going to start with what I can. I'm going to find something that is affordable. Again, not a 3-level building, just a 1-level building. But I wanted it to be cute. Like, I still had the idea of what I wanted. I apologize about my hair. To be honest, today is Friday in the office. So like, I was like, whatever. Anyway. You have to start with what you have. And it's almost like you're proving yourself. You're showcasing your concept. You're creating and you're just taking action. And then sooner or later, people will notice. And sooner or later, it'll become obvious that, your idea is working. It's going to take off. And then the opportunities might start opening up. I'm not promising that it's going to happen fast or it's going to be super fast. But the opportunities do start coming because now people start recognizing your ability. And sadly, this is what it is right now. And this is why I wanted to talk about this and the truth about starting as a woman, as a minority, as an immigrant, because it is different. And I recognize that, again, the gurus out there are not really addressing these challenges. And, I was like, well, again, if I'm complaining about it, or like if I think gurus are not addressing these challenges, like, why not do it myself? And this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this video and other videos, because I really want to be that source. And maybe I'm not like Oprah Winfrey yet or whoever else, but I have learned a lot along the way. And I know there's people that, you know, just like there's people ahead of me, there's also people behind me that are still learning or still haven't launched their business. And if I can share any tips with you, if I can share any resources, if I can share any knowledge that I've gathered along the way, I'm more than happy to do it. So again, number one, find a viable idea. When you find yourself saying, I wish there was this, I can't find that, that's an indication usually that it's something that you can create, and not every idea you have is viable. So again, we have a million things that we can say, oh, I wish this and that, but also think about, you know, do I know about this? How is it unique? You know, can I make it unique? Can I do it in a way that's not being done? Whatever, right? Like, make sure you ask these questions, but don't go out and say you want to start something that's just everybody else and their mother is doing, because you can do well. Like, if you say, I just want to do social media marketing or something, it doesn't mean you can do well doing those things. You can do well, but I think there's a difference between being a solopreneur or a contractor, like when you're doing these social media things and whatnot, and having a startup. And I think the startup, it's finding the viable idea, product, or service that is going to be able to scale. Okay, so when you're a contractor or solopreneur, a lot of the time it's just you just basically consulting or coaching other people, and it's not really a company, like it's not really scalable. And so ask these questions and find ways or ideas that spark, like, if you really want to become an entrepreneur, if you really want to build a company, have a startup that eventually can get funded, or that you can do franchising or something that you can scale, find that thing that no one else is doing. So that's number one. Number two is start taking action, right? Which is going back to that point, you know, start doing it. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be that everybody gives you the money and the connections and everything at once and you can just easily do it. It's never going to be easy. So just start doing it. Start taking steps towards your goal. Start doing the research. Start asking questions. Even if you don't have those perfect role models, at least start asking questions to other entrepreneurs, what challenges they faced, what mistakes did they make that they learned from, and how you can avoid those mistakes. Talk to other people. I always tell people, ask me. I'm so happy to share information. So I've had women, again, from all over the world ask me, how did you start? How did you do this? How did you fund it yourself? And I'm more than happy to share that information. And I will be better at sharing it here on YouTube. But yeah, that's step number 2. And step number 3 is you have to get creative. You have to be able to not just have a great idea and have a great business plan, but you have to be able to communicate it well. Whether it's for investors, whether it's for your branding, for your social media channels, for your website, you need to be able to get creative so that it stands out, because everything is saturated. And that's not to say that there's no room for new businesses. You know, like when I started the co-working, there were at least 6 other co-working spaces here in San Diego. And San Diego is a pretty small town. And so, 6 co-working spaces mean that every one of them, like the farthest away one is like 15 minutes away, There are some that are 10 minutes away or 7 minutes away. So everything is really close. So it's not overly saturated, but it wasn't like no one else was doing it. So it had to be creative. It had to be different. And for me, it was building that community. I already had a community that I had been nurturing and throwing events for. And, I had already built that brand. And I got creative when it came to the colors, that they would stand out, that they would be super feminine. So even though we welcome everybody at Femex Quarters, it is a feminine space. It is a space where a woman or someone who appreciates feminine, beautiful space, will enjoy. It's not for the person that maybe is a techie guy that couldn't care less as long as it's quiet. he'll sit there and work. This is for people that appreciate, for creatives and creators and makers and vloggers, like the people that will appreciate the beauty of the space. And so I decided to do it that way. And I decided to be creative with the branding and the messaging and really making something that was well crafted. And I think this is really important. And it doesn't mean you need to go hire anyone or spend a lot of money. For example, when I finally found the place, and I will share the story on another video, but when I finally found the place, I didn't have the budget for a designer. Designers charge at least $15,000 or more to just put the concept together. And then you also have to spend on the actual furniture and decor and plans and whatnot. So I was like, well, I cannot make the furniture. Like, I definitely can't do that. Like, the things that you definitely 100% cannot do. Like, I'm not going to build furniture. I bought the furniture, but I designed it myself, because who's better than like the person that has a vision? Like, I had the vision. I knew what I wanted it to feel like. I knew what colors I wanted. I knew what feel I wanted. And for me, it was really important to have both creativity, like really creative spots where people could feel inspired, but also having a minimalist, simple, just like simple space that could help you be focused. You know, I don't necessarily enjoy the co-working spaces that have like big orange furniture. I get it from an artistic point that they're trying to be bold and you know, all that. I get it, but it's not my style. It's not what I wanted. I think bright lime green, which is what I see in co-working spaces, or oranges or colors like that, it almost distracts you from what you're doing. And essentially a co-working space, I believe, is a place where you can focus. And so I was like, I want a place that's minimalist, that's simple, but also inspiring and beautiful. And so I wanted to find that balance. And so again, because I knew the vision, I just said, this is where I'm going to save money. I'm going to design the space by myself. I made a few mistakes along the way. Like, I had to reconfigure our kitchen, for example, but it turned out to be beautiful. And even nowadays I get questions, and now people also ask me questions about decor and what to buy for the house and what furniture and this and that. And it's like kind of cool. It's really flattering to me, because I'm like, I'm not even like trained for interior design or decorating, right? So the reason I'm sharing this is because there are skills that you have that, even though you haven't been trained, it's places where you can save money and you can just apply your skills to it, whether it's designing your website, whether it's, you know, maybe you're really good at sales, maybe you're not on the creative side, but you're like, okay, I'm really good at sales, I'm gonna have a really good sales plan, I'm gonna create all the scripts, I'm gonna do all these things like well crafted, you know, the messaging, all that, and then I'm gonna outsource the creative, or vice versa. Just make sure that, again, because I'm talking to people that may not have all the funding and all the resources and whatnot, this is a way that you can save money, but save it in a smart way. There's places where you don't want to save money there. You want a professional. You want a professional lawyer. You want a professional accountant. At least for me. Again, it's for me because I'm on the creative side, a strategic side, visionary side. Now, if you are an accountant, if that's your background, then that's great. You can save money there and then contract the other people. But make sure whatever it is that you do, make sure that you craft it well. Make sure you get creative. Make sure you get creative about how to save money, where to save money, you know, what shortcuts in a good way you can do to save a lot of money. Like for me, it was like, I want a bunch of plants everywhere. Obviously, the plants are going to be cheaper than like having a lot of furniture everywhere. So really simple design, but lots of plants, lots of greens, and it feels super good. And then I would say the fourth thing is you need to reach out. You need to knock on doors. You need to build a circle around you of people that will potentially become mentors to you. What I mean by that is when I first finally found the place and all that. Again, I'll share the story later. I didn't have those people. I had people that either followed me and they had questions for me and I was happy to help, that I was mentoring, or peers. And peers are friends that are kind of like on my level, kind of, the people that I mentor is like they're kind of lower than you, not in a bad way, but they're looking up to you. Then you have your peers, and I had a lot of peers. I had a lot of people that were like entrepreneurs that were starting out too, that they were creatives, they were vloggers and whatnot. But I didn't really have people that were ahead of me that I can look out to. And again, this is a common challenge for us. And so I had to be intentional, and sometimes it's kind of like weird sometimes depending on how you are, but like it's not super easy to go up to people, and it's not like you're gonna go and say, hey, can you mentor me? Like, people are busy. So what I did is, whenever I had an opportunity for someone, like I have a podcast, for example, so whenever I had an opportunity, I would reach out to someone that I admire, that I like their work, that I like what they're doing, how they're showing up in this world. And I just would ask them if they wanted to be a guest on my podcast. Why? Because you're actually offering them something. I have the followers, I have the audience. And so I am actually giving them something, exposure to a new community, them getting to share their story, whatnot. And so I would invite them to my podcast, or I would invite them to speak at my events, or I would do a feature on them on social media. And what ended up happening is that a lot of these women that I was doing that with, they were either a little bit ahead of me, or maybe they were kind of like me, but I just didn't know them. And they were, in a different city, or in a way, or in a place where I could learn something from them. Even though they were my peer, like, they knew things that I didn't, and vice versa. I knew things that they didn't know. So like, we could support each other and we could help each other out. And so I really believe that we have to plant those seeds, and you're not going with the intention of like, I'm going to give this person something so they can pay me back. Like, no, that's not the intention. The intention is to truly be that valuable person to other people, because you'll never know how it's going to come back to you, but I can guarantee that it will come back to you in a good way. Even if it's not from that person, even if it's not reciprocated from that person, it'll come to you from somebody else, because now you're putting that out there. You're, again, planting seeds, and you don't know how they're going to bloom, where they're going to bloom, but you're going to get something out of it. And so if you feel like, okay, I don't really know people outside my circle, and especially when you are about to start, like, you want to become an entrepreneur, most likely your friends are not entrepreneurs. Most likely, like, if you have a corporate job, most likely your friends are your coworkers or other people that have corporate jobs, or you may know someone over there in a class or someplace that has a business, but maybe you're not close to them. So you have to be intentional about creating that circle for yourself. Become friends with the entrepreneurs. Again, if you don't know how to approach it, you don't want to ask, offer something to them. See where they could use help in something. Like, if you're good at something and you notice they're not, or they have to outsource that, maybe you can offer something for them. And what's happened to me is that the more that I did that, the more that I genuinely made new friends, new friends that then I was top of mind for them when they needed a speaker, or when they needed a guest, or when they wanted to start a business. I had a question. I was top of mind because I was putting myself out there. And likewise, the people that did that with me, they are top of mind too. So whenever I do want to highlight an entrepreneur in my community, the people on top of mind are not the people that never ever talk to me and don't reach out, don't ask questions. They're the people that are asking me questions, or reaching out, checking in, making friendship with me, whatever it may be. And sometimes it's even the people that ask me questions, right? Like, even those coworkers or co-working founders that are starting out elsewhere, they're top of mind for me because we've been having conversations and we've been in touch. And so even though I'm kind of mentoring them, they're still top of mind. So guess what? When they finally launch or open, I'm going to be more than happy to say, hey, let me share it. Let me do a shout out for you. And so always be looking to plant seeds everywhere, and just genuinely plant those seeds, not waiting for something in return, but also, put yourself out there. Do that. Like, you have to do it. And I know it's hard. Like, most people tell me like, oh, well, you're an extrovert, that's why you can do that. No, I'm not an extrovert. I'm actually an ambivert and in between. I'm not necessarily the most outgoing person out there. I'm not super shy either, but I'm not the most outgoing. And usually at bigger events, I'm terrified, or approaching a new person that I don't know yet, I'm terrified. I thrive in small groups, in groups that I've already sort of met the people there. I'm fine. But I had to step into that zone of discomfort. I had to put myself out there. So that's really important. You have to put yourself out there. And then number five, you have to be resilient. You have to believe in your goal. You have to believe in your dream. You have to believe in your business. And girl or guy or whoever is listening, I know that it's hard. I was told no so many times. By all means, I was not supposed to be the person opening a co-working space. By anyone's account, I went to the banks, I went to the SBA office, I went to, business advisors, like whoever I talked to, they somehow, probably with good intentions, would tell me why I couldn't do what I wanted to do. I had never had commercial real estate. I hadn't been in business for that long, because at this point I had only had my agency for a year. I didn't have the connections or the backing. I didn't have the cash. I had nothing by all their standards. And I simply believed in what I wanted to do. I believed that the need was there, and therefore I was going to be able to really make it happen. And I just, again, had to get creative of how I made it happen. But I had to be resilient. I had to believe in what I had. I had to believe in myself. There were times when I would cry. There were times where, like, I remember one specific situation. I left the office of the SBA and like I wanted to cry, because she was like, well, you don't have the funding, and you can't get a business loan because you haven't been in business for that long. And in my head, I remember thinking, well, you're never going to be in business for 2 years if they don't even fund you in the first place. Like, how can you, like, if you can't even open the business, how are you going to have the 2 years experience? And so it was frustrating. And I remember I left and I was crying, like driving home, and it was discouraging, but it was also encouraging, because it was almost like a challenge. Like, I will show you. And it wasn't like, okay, I'm only gonna do you to show you something. Like, no. But it was kind of like, I can do it, and I will make it happen no matter what. And you just have to get really creative. And so part of it is tangible things. Part of it is, yes, like you have to have the funding and this and that and the business plan and whatnot. But a lot of it is faith. I'm sorry, but, I know a lot of people out there like, oh, business is separate from spirituality or blah, blah, blah. In my personal life, again, this is my personal account, I can't separate. I think for me, faith and positivity and, having like just trusting, it has made such a big difference for me in my life, in everything that I've done. And for me, in this case, that was what kept me going. Faith, just knowing, trusting myself, trusting God, trusting that things would work out, trusting that if it was for me, it would come and it would happen. And I just knew I had that certainty that it was for me no matter what. And so months went by, and in the meantime, I was getting ready. In the meantime, I was creating the business plan. Like, you would think I had investors lined up to show the business plan to, or that I had banks saying like, yes, bring the business plan, because I was acting as if I already had those things, and I honestly didn't. And everybody had told me that they wouldn't even look at it, right? Because I didn't qualify. If I went to a bank, I wouldn't qualify for a business loan. So even if I had a plan, it didn't matter. But I was doing it as if I had the opportunity. And this is where preparation, somebody said that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. Again, if you're not prepared, an opportunity may come your way, but it's not going to come to you, and you won't be able to accept it because you're not ready. And likewise, if if you're ready but there's no opportunity, then you really can't do it either. But the first thing is to be ready. You have to be ready. And so I got ready, again, trusting, having faith, being positive. I got ready. I was doing my business plan, and lo and behold, I found a space that was in my budget, even though San Diego is like one of the most expensive cities in the country. Like, I did not open a co-working space in Provo, Utah. I opened a co-working space in San Diego, by downtown. If you ask me how, and if you ask me to tell you like a business explanation for this or a scientific explanation, I don't have any, because I honestly trust that this place was meant for me, and that it was ready for me, and that it happened to be in my budget, and that it happened to be cheaper than anything else in this size, because this space is actually pretty big. Like, we do events here, we do a lot of things. We can fit like 250 people in here. So if you had told me that before, I would have been like, no, like, I'm gonna get a space maybe that's like 800 square feet. No, I got a space that's 3,600 square feet. Again, somewhere in the middle, right? Because I didn't get the 800 square feet space, but I also didn't get the 3-story, building. But I got the perfect thing for me, and it's a perfect start. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be perfect for you. And honestly, I'm so glad, because with COVID and everything, if I had a 3-level building, I probably wouldn't be able to fill that up, and it wouldn't be feasible for me. So I'm really glad that I dodged a bullet and I found my space. And this is a beautiful thing, that when you get ready, the opportunity comes. Because imagine, what if I found the space and I didn't have the business plan? I didn't have some money saved up, like I didn't have some funding. They wouldn't have given it to me. The landlord was like, okay, like, can I see your business plan? And can I see, like, he just wanted like a deposit. That's the other blessing. Like, he didn't want all this money in the bank like everybody else. Like, they want to look at your bank account, they want you to have like hundreds of thousands of dollars in commercial real estate. This person's like, as long as you have the first month and you have a deposit that matches the first month, you can have the space, you can go in. That was feasible for me. That was doable for me. So that I attribute to being positive, to having faith, to trusting in your vision, no matter what you're told. If I had given up, I would have stopped searching. I would have stopped doing the business plan. I would have never found this place. I would not be here. So whatever it is you want to do, remember to trust yourself, to keep going, to do as much as you can with what you have until the rest comes, right? Like, I didn't have the building, but I did as much as I could. I did the business plan, I did the marketing plan, I started the page, the social media pages, and like the website, because I wanted to start getting traffic, and I already had the community and all that. So I started doing all that, and I started doing teasers on social media, and then not even a couple weeks later, I found the space. And the space, it's a really cool story. That's a miracle in itself, but I feel like that's a topic for a video in itself. So these are the tips that I can share with you that I think, again, not everyone's going to share these things because they just haven't been through that. They can just say, oh, you ask friends and family for cash, or, you go to Silicon Valley and you pitch to these investors, and it's like, well, that doesn't really apply to me, or the chances of a woman getting funded by Silicon Valley they're very, very slim. Doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm not telling you not to do it. All I'm saying is, again, if you prepare yourself, you could do it. You could potentially be that person. All I'm saying is, just do what you can with what you have faith, don't give up on your dream, and just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. That's all. It's not all I have to share, but I'm going to keep it at that because this is getting long. And I think these are the best tips for like the topic of this video. And I want to start doing more of these. So if you want to watch more of these, let me know, comment, because these things take time, and I'm more than happy to spend the time doing it if I know that it's being helpful. So if it is helpful, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you let me know in the comments. If you have any specific questions or any video requests, let me know. Make sure you share with your friends. And yeah, just let's support each other. All right, besos.